Okay. Okay. Sorry. Tohoros. Okay. Yud Dalet. One who places grapes taken from the baskets and from the expanse on the ground onto the winepress, Beit Shammai says he must put them in the winepress with hands out of tahor. And if he puts them in the winepress with hands out of tameh, he has rendered the grapes tameh. Priscilla says he may put the grapes in the winepress with hands out of tameh and can still separate the truma and tahara. If one took grapes from a basket or from an expanse on leaves, everyone agrees that he must put them in the winepress with hands out of tahor. And if he put them in the winepress with hands out of tameh, he has rendered the grapes tameh. One who eats grapes taken from baskets or from an expanse on ground, even if the grapes are cracked and the juice is dripping from the winepress is tahor. If the grapes are from a bucket or from an expanse of leaves and a single grape fell onto the winepress, if the grape has a seal, the winepress is tahor. If it does not have a seal, the winepress is tameh. If a cluster of grapes fell from him and he pressed them onto an empty place on the winepress, if the cluster consists of precisely the volume of an egg, the winepress is tahor. If the cluster consists of more than the volume of an egg, the winepress is tameh, for as soon as the first drop of juice came out, it was rendered tameh by the volume of an egg. If someone was standing and talking on the rim of a pit of wine and saliva spurted out of his mouth, and there is a doubt whether the saliva reached the pit or did not reach it, the uncertainty is ruled tahor. Okay.
Hey, Zion, Hazolef is Habor.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm just going to eat a little bit because I haven't had anything since I got up this morning.
Go for it. Go and grab something.
I'm right here with you.
Okay, Hazolef is Habor. So a guy is busy emptying out the wine that's in his bore. Okay, he's taking a bunch of buckets and scooping out the wine into the buckets. Okay, Nimtza sheretz barishana, and now he's busy. He's taking the buckets and pouring them into bottles now. And the first bucket that he used to pour out, he finds he's busy pouring it into a bottle, and then he sees there's a dead sheretz inside the bucket. Okay, so now before we even look at what the halacha is, let's just apply our minds to the situation. Either you've got two possibilities. Either the bucket, the sheretz was in the bore and he scooped it out, or it was in the bucket initially when he put it in. Okay, but in either case, the sheretz has come into contact with the rest of the bore.
Right. So
it doesn't matter what your situation is at this point. If the first bucket that went in has got a dead sheretz in it, that's tickets for the rest of your wine. I mean, it'll all be tameh. Means that you just have to. It's okay to have tameh wine. You just can't use it when you're a batara. Okay, kulan tameos. Everything is tameh. Bachrona. However, if it's in the last bucket, hitmea v'kulan tohoros. So now you do not have to assume that the last bucket scooped up the dead sheretz out of the pit. You could just say that the bucket initially had a dead sheretz in it. You didn't notice it. You just went in and scooped things out. So this is the last bucket, and it's the only one that's tameh. All the rest of the buckets are fine.
In the previous case, we said the sheretz could have been in the bore and then got into the first.
It could have been in the bore, but when we say with tumas, our rule with tuma is that we assume that the tuma is the chazaka is it's in the bucket now. It was always in the bucket. We don't assume that it moved. All the tumas are at the time of that they're discovered. So the sheretz is in the bucket. Sheretz was always in the bucket. Okay, so that's the only one that's tameh. Masai, when is this so? Bisman shehu zolef b'chol achas ve'achas. That's only so if he's using each individual bucket to scoop out things. Not that he's got a ladle. Okay. If he's got a ladle and he's busy scooping and from the bore and putting it into the buckets. Okay. Nimtza sheretz b'achas mehen, and you find a sheretz in one of the buckets. Hitmea bilvad. That's only the one that you found it in is tameh. You don't have to assume that the ladle picked up the sheretz and dropped it into one of the buckets. Okay. Again, the tumah is judged according to the time that you found it, and if you found it in the bucket, it was always in the bucket. Masai, again, when does this apply? Bisman shehu bodek v'lo mechaseh or mechaseh v'lo bodek. It's only if the buckets, either he checked the buckets and did not cover them, or he didn't check them and he did cover them. Okay, which means so let's just look at each case. If he checked the buckets first, so he looked in each bucket and saw it was empty, and then he filled them all up, but he left them uncovered. And then he's pouring them out and he finds a dead sheretz in one of them.
Yes,
So
yeah.
he can assume that the sheretz climbed in while he wasn't looking and drowned there. Okay. So he doesn't have to assume anything about the having been in the vat. Okay. Or alternatively, if he didn't bother checking them, but even if he covered them, so then he didn't check them before, you can assume that the sheretz was in there before. However, if he checked inside each bucket first and then covered it after having filled it up, and now he finds a dead sheretz inside one of the buckets, now you can't assume that the sheretz was there all the time because you looked before. He looked before and he saw that there was no sheretz there. He covered it, so no sheretz could have gotten in afterwards. There's only one way the sheretz could have gotten in, and that's if it was scooped in from the bore. Right? If there's a sheretz there, b'chavis hakol tameh. If he finds a sheretz inside the bucket, everything's tameh. But bore, if he finds a sheretz in the bore, well, for sure everything's tameh because that's if it was found in the bore, then it was always in the bore. But machat, and if he finds it in the ladle, hakol tameh, because the only way it gets into the ladle is if he got it out of the bore. So in all these cases, all of the wine becomes tameh. Okay. Bein ha'igulim lazagin. Now what? Now the area between the igulim is the crushing stones that they use to squeeze out the remaining juice from the grapes. Okay, lazagin. So in between those crushing stones and the pile of grape skins, Rishus Harabim. It's considered a Rishus Harabim as far as Tumah is concerned because you've got workers going backwards and forwards, and therefore, so why are we saying Rishus Harabim? Because it's any suffix that comes about in that area is considered a Rishus Harabim, and therefore suffix is Lakula. Okay, Kerim Shilifnei Habotzrim. If you're in a vineyard and the area that's ahead of the people who are picking, that's called the Rishus HaYachid because people do not walk through there because they don't want to be caught out, accused of stealing grapes. So that's a private domain, and if any suffix of tumah happens in there, then the suffix is tameh. But after the harvesters have been there, now that becomes a Rishus Harabim. Why? Because the aniyim come afterwards. The aniyim are coming and looking for all of the leket, shicha, peya, whatever is left behind. Okay, so once the aniyim are coming in, that whole area is a Rishus Harabim for tumah. Masai, when is the so? Bisman she'harabim nichnasim bezo v'yotzim bezo. But that's only so if there's a thoroughfare. If the aniyim can come in and on the one side of the vineyard and walk out on the other side, because then it really is a thoroughfare. But if it's just one entrance to the vineyard and you come in, take your stuff, and come out back through the same entrance that you came through, then that's still called the Rishus HaYachid. Clay Beis Habad. Now the kalim that are used in the olive press, vishal gas, and in the wine press, ha'ekel. The ekel is a box which you put the with bars in it that you put the remainder of the oil from the psolit of the zaitim.
They call this a mesh basket.
A mesh basket. Okay, that's right. So a mesh basket. Bisman shehen shel eitz, if they are made out of wood, menagvan bahen toharin. All you have to do is wash them down, and they're tahor. So you don't have to worry about any tameh liquids that are on them. You just have to wash them because the basket itself is not susceptible to tumah. It's not a container. So the basket itself cannot become tameh. All you need to do is wash off any liquids that were on it, and it's tahor. Bisman shehen shel gemi. If it's made out of reeds, miyashnan kol shnei masar chodesh. So because it's absorbent, you have to wait for 12 months for it to dry out completely. Otherwise, because any tiny liquids that are in there are going to be nicely absorbed. So you've got to wait for 12 months, or choltan b'chamim, or else boil them. Put them into boiling water, and in order to get rid of any liquids that are in them. Rabbi Yossi Omer, im nasanan b'shiboles hanahar dayo. He says just put it into a strongly flowing stream, and the river will wash it out. And if it's if it's actually a container, if it's a kli that is susceptible to tumah, then of course it also has to go to mikvah in order to remove its tumah. but that is enough for it. Says Rabbi Yossi, just rinse. You know what we're trying to do is get rid of the tamei liquids, and to get rid of those tamei liquids, Rabbi Yossi says it's good enough to put it into a strongly flowing stream, and that's enough. Hajanalach maseches Tohoros. Right,
Mikvaos. Mikvaos.
Mikvaos.
There are 6 grades of mikvaos,
No,
each
no,
higher
no,
than.
me. Hello.
Oh, okay. That's right. It's you. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, mikvah. Okay, so we're starting out by showing that there are 6 different levels of mikvah in terms of in increasing power. So your lowest level of what isn't even called a mikvah yet is puddles made from rainwater. Okay, sheish malos b'mikvah. There are 6 levels. Zor l'mala mizor in increasing order. Zor l'mala mizor. Mei gevayim. So water that's just for example rainwater puddles that are on the ground. Okay, those rainwater puddles that are on the ground cannot become tamei while they are still attached to the ground, but they don't have the power to be mataher anything because it's just a puddle of water. The only thing that makes them different from any other water that's been put in a kli or something like that is that they are insusceptible to tumah, and even if you've got a mace lying on the ground with his hand in the water, that water is still tahor. However, as soon as it gets uprooted from that puddle, like let's say somebody comes and wants to drink, he picks up some water with his hand, and some water drips back into that puddle. The water that drips back into the puddle is susceptible to tumah because it has been uprooted. Okay, so as long as it's there in its natural state, it's insusceptible to tumah. But as soon as somebody picks it up, now it becomes susceptible. Okay, so let's see this in the Mishnah. So now this water in the puddle. Shasa tame. So a tame person came and drank from it. Either he stuck his face into it, and therefore and then he picked up his face and water dripped back down. Okay, so the first person was tame and he drank from it, or he stuck his hand and picked it up and drank from it, and some water dripped back down, and therefore and then afterwards a tahor person came and drank from it. Okay, tame. So the tahor person, we choshesh for the drops of water that were dropped back by the tame person. Yeah, and the tahor person then becomes tame. Shasa tamei umile b'kli tahor. What happens if a tame person drank from it, and now somebody came and stuck a tahor kli into it and picked up the water? The kli will also become tame. Okay. Shasa tamei v'nafal kikar shel truma. Okay, so now again, drops of water fell into this fell back into this puddle. So somewhere in there is tame water. Okay. So even though the rest of the water is still susceptible to tumah, but you do have drops of water in there that are tamei, and because it's not a mikveh, it doesn't have the din of hashaka like a normal mikveh. Even if tamei water falls into it, it immediately becomes tahor. But that's only for a mikveh. But
Right.
for like a little puddle of rainwater, it's not matari. So you've got a mixture of tahor and tamei water in there. Okay. So now what happens is a loaf of truma fell into that water. And the Kohen says, no. And he picks it up. Now, if the Kohen said, well, let me just take this water and sort of rub it over the bread to give it a nice little gloss, then he's saying that he's showing that he wants it there, and then immediately his truma becomes tamei. Because now once he's saying that he wants it there. But im lo hediach tahor. But if he didn't rinse it, then he's saying, I'm so unhappy that this water came onto here. Because he is unhappy about it having happened, then the tamei water that was in there is considered batel against the tahor water that was in the puddle, and he shakes it off. He shows he didn't want it there, and therefore the truma remains tahor.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Weird. Strange.
Interesting situation that. Okay. Back to Tohoros.
Tohoros, we are on Ches Aleph. If one lives together with an Am Haaretz in a courtyard and he forgot utensils in the courtyard, even sealed earthenware barrels or a sealed earthenware oven, they are tamei. Rabbi Yehuda rules the oven tahor when it is sealed, and Rabbi Yossi says when the oven is tamei until he makes a partition for it that is 10 hands from high. Okay. If one deposits utensils within Amaretz, they become tummy with corpse tumor, and they become tummy through midras tumor. That if he knows that he eats tumor, they are tahor from corpse tumor, but they are tummy throughout midras. Rabbi Yossi says if he gave him a chest full of clothes, when the lid presses down on the clothes, they become tummy midras. If the lid does not press down on the clothes, they become tummy with light tumor, even if the key is in the owner's hand. If one loses an object during the day and finds it the same day, it is tahor. During the day, if he found it during the night if he found it during the day if he found it in the following day, it's tameh. This is the rule. Whatever the entire night or part of it passes over it, it is tameh. If one spreads out clothes in the public domain, they are tahor. In the private domain. In the private domain, they are tameh. If one was watching them, they are tahor. If they fell and went to bring them, they are tameh. If his bucket fell into the well of an amaretz and he went to bring something with which to rinse it or to raise it, it is tameh since it left in the domain of an amaretz for a short time and went on their way. Okay.
Okay. And para. Yud Gimel.
A jug of katos ash that touches sheret is tahor. If he placed it on top of it, if Eliezer declared tahor and the chachama declared tameh. If it touched foodstuffs, drinks, or holy scriptures, it is tahor. If he placed it on top of them, Rabbi Yossi declares it tahor, and the sages declare it tameh. A person who is tahor in regard to mekatos who touched an oven, even if he touched it with his hand, he is tameh, and if he touched it with his foot, he is tahor. He was standing on top of an oven and stretched his hand outside the airspace of an oven with the flask in it. And similarly, if a pole was placed on top of the oven and on it two jugs on this side, one on that side, where the kiva declares the contents of the flask and jug tahor, and the sages declare the contents of the flask and jug tameh. If he was standing outside the airspace of an oven and he stretched his hands out to a window, took the flask and passed it over the top of the oven, Rabbi Kiva declares it tameh and the common care tahor. But this person who is tahor for katos may stand on top of the oven with an empty utensil that is tahor for katos in his hand, or with a utensil filled with water that is not sanctified.
Okay. Ohalos.
Okay. Tet Aleph. A beehive is located in the doorway of a house with its mouth outdoors. An olive-sized piece of corpse is located outdoors, either below the hive or above it. Any items that directly above or below the olive piece size becomes tameh. Whatever is not directly below or below the olive side piece, or whatever is inside either the hide or the house remains tahor. Only the olive side piece is inside the house, only that which is inside the house becomes tameh. If he is inside the hive, if it is inside the house, everything becomes tameh. The hive is one handbreadth above the ground, and there is tumor below it, inside the house or above the hide. Everything becomes tameh except for that which is inside the hive. If the tumor is inside the hive, everything becomes tameh. In what case is it supply? When the hive is a utensil with windows. However, if it was a broken and stuffed with straw, or if the windows were covered, what is considered covered? When there is no window the size of a handbreadth and an olive-sized piece of corpse is located underneath the hive, and utensils below the olive-sized piece, as deep as one can go, becomes tameh. If the olive-sized piece is above the hide, or utensils directly above the olive-sized piece up to the sky become tameh. If the olive-sized piece is inside the house, only the house becomes tameh. And if the olive-sized piece is inside the hive, only that which is inside becomes tameh.
Okay.
And Menachos. Gimel base. If he said, I take upon myself to bring a mikvah offering or a kind of mikvah offering, and he brings one, if he said mikvah offerings or a kind of mikvah offerings, brings two. If he said, I specified, but I do not know what I specified, he must bring all five of them. If he said, I specified a mikvah offering of Isserons, but I do not know what I specified, he must bring a mikvah offering of 60 Isserons. Rebbe says he must bring all the mikvah offerings from 1 to 60 Isserons. If he said, I take upon myself to bring pieces of wood, he may not bring less than 2 logs. Frankincense, he may not bring less than a chametz. There are 5 chametzim. If one said, I take upon myself to bring frankincense, he may not bring less than a chametz. One who donates a mikvah offering must bring it with a chametz of frankincense, and one who offers a chametz outside the temple courtyard is liable, and the 2 spoonfuls require 2 chametzim. If one said, I take upon myself to bring gold, he may not bring less than a dinar of gold. Silver, he may not bring less than a dinner of silver. And copper, he may not bring less than the equivalent of amount of silver. I specified, but I do not know what I specified. He must bring until he can say, I did not intend this. Okay. And Nazir. Gil's item. Someone about whom to test the witness eyes were testifying. These testified that he declared 2 terms in Zeros, and they testified that he declared 5 terms in Zeros. But Shammai said the testimony is split and there is no Naziris here. But Beis Hillel says 2 is included in 5, so that he is a Nazir for 2 terms. Someone who said, I am a Nazir, and his friend heard and said, and I, they are all Nazir. Or if the first is released, they are all released. If the last is released, the last is permitted, but all the others are bound. If he said, I am a Nazir, and his friend heard and said, my mouth is like his mouth, and my hair is like his hair, he is a Nazir. If he said, I am a Nazir, and his wife heard and said, and he revoked hers, but he stands, and if she says, I am a Nazira, and her husband heard and said, here, and he cannot revoke it. If he said, I am a Nazir, and you, and she said, Amen. If he said, I am a Nazir, and you, and she said, Amen, he can revoke hers, but his stands. If she said, I am a Nazira, and you, and he said, Amen, he cannot revoke.
Okay.
And
Orla.
Base dollars. Whatever causes to ferment or seasons or renders meduma with truma, with oil or with kalim, karim is forbidden. But Beit Shammai said it also renders unclean. Beit Hillel says it never renders unclean until it contains the bulk of an egg. Dostai of Kefar Yitma was one of the disciples of Beit Shammai, and he said, I heard that from Beit Shammai, the elder, who said it never renders unclean unless it contains the bulk of an egg. Now, concerning what did they say that causes to form it, or flavors, or which renders the meduma, the ruling is stringent. In the case of like kinds, stringently and leniently. If there are different kinds, how so? If leaven of wheat fell into dough of wheat, and it suffices to leaven it, and then whether it is outweighed by 100 to 1, it is not outweighed by 100 to 1. It is forbidden, and if it is not outweighed by 100 to 1, then whether it suffices to cause fermentation or it does not suffice to cause fermentation, it is forbidden.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. I gotta make sure I'm sitting next to someone who says he's a Nazir and not to say anything. Just keep my mouth shut.
Okay.
Okay. I have a sign right on my desk that says Shawl 9:45. I walked in, didn't even look at it. I just said, that's so you know. Sorry. Okay. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.